Welcome and thank you for joining us. My name is Al Guevara. With us today, the executive director of the Laredo Stroke Support Group, Eli Ceja. Eli, thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. I was as I started reaching out to people when I started this channel, I started, who needs to get their message out? Who needs to get the word out about what they do because it matters. And my brother says, "Hey, talk to Eli, Laredo Stroke Support Group." Absolutely. Now, we do know, like I've heard about the Laredo Stroke Support Group because I've been at events, etc., when you all have also been present. But I want to share what you all do with a broader audience. I'm just going to go to your website right now, laredostrokesupport.com, and read a couple things. Our mission: Laredo Stroke Support is a nonprofit organization dedicated to improving the lives of those affected by stroke through the use of meaningful group encouragement, local networking support, and free therapy services. Our vision: to enrich the lives of stroke survivors by reducing the incidence and impact of stroke. That's yeah, man, that's some good stuff, Eli. I mean, you're doing God's work, so to speak, right? I mean, that's very, very important. Tell us how you came to be involved with Laredo Stroke Support Group and what it is and what does it mean to people.
Yeah, so I started with Laredo Stroke Support in May of 2019, right? So they were the current executive director was going off to back to school. She was going to get her master's, and there was the opening as the executive director. And so I shot my shot and I went for it, and I was able to get the job. And little did I know that it was going to be far much more rewarding than just a job. I mean, this is back when I was in high school, I used to always think that what I wanted to do when I grow up, I said I wouldn't know, but I knew that I wanted to provide some sort of service in the best of my capacity. And Laredo Stroke Support has offered me that times 10. So
Sure.
Laredo Stroke Support started back in 2012 by Bill and Dee Dee Hernser.
Mhm.
Bill had a stroke before starting Laredo Stroke Support. He had a stroke, and I believe it's in 2008. I may be wrong about this. I'm sorry if I am. He had a stroke in 2008, and he was running at Austin. He was running
Mhm.
in a trail out in Austin. And when he had his stroke, he collapsed, had a stroke, was out there for a couple of hours up until a runner bumped into him and kind of figured out what was going on. Bill goes to a hospital. Bill has a huge stroke. His life completely changes. As you may know, Bill Hernser
Yeah.
is a total businessman. He's been a businessman all of his life. That's all he's known. He's also a very, very fit man. I
Very.
mean, very fit man. Um, and so it was kind of surprising for a rather healthy person to have a stroke, and that's
Mhm.
what really interested Bill. So Bill is traveling back and forth from Laredo to Austin for a couple of years to receive therapy. Right after his stroke, he's in need of a speech therapy. Most importantly, unfortunately, when he was here in Laredo, his insurance kind of capped and
Yeah.
uh, they call it a plateau, they call it a cap, and your insurance can no longer cover the therapies that you are needing. And so he found an organization out in Austin that went above this cap, and you'd be able to continue to receive the speech therapy. So he traveled out to Austin for 5 years,
Wow.
and he'd leave Wednesday morning, come back Friday afternoon, do that weekly for 5 years to
Yeah.
receive that therapy. And I guess at one point he kind of had this realization, well, what am I doing going to Austin every week? Why isn't there something here in Laredo, right? And that's when Laredo Stroke Support kind of bloomed. It started off very small. Didi likes to call it a little cafecito group. Really, they just wanted to gather and with other stroke survivors, share their stories, share how they are now and how they've overcome their struggles, right? Started off at a small hospital in town, and then what started there kind of turned into the organization that we are now. So I won't get too much into the history on how we got here, but I'll say that it was a long time and a lot of hard work by Bill, Didi, and the rest of the board.
So what?
Now,
Yeah. What about now? What can you tell us now?
yeah. So now what we offer are free adaptive therapies.
Okay.
So we like to call them adaptive physical therapy
Mhm.
or adaptive occupational therapy, right? So I kind of go down as our weeks go. So we start off Tuesdays with exercise class. And that's ran by Anid Vargas, which has a decent history of physical therapy assistants, right? So she has a decent background, kind of knew what it was like to provide some sort of therapy to stroke survivors. And so since then, she decided to start an exercise class. She has her own gym. And
Mm.
so I'll tell you this, it's nothing easy and it's a good
No.
sweat. And these stroke survivors are, it's hard on them, but you really see that they're really trying to overcome and they really push themselves to become better. And you really see that in exercise class because she'll really push them to their limit and they want to do it and they want to go even above of what she's asking for them. So we have exercise class on Tuesdays, which we like to call adaptive physical therapy, right?
Hmm.
Exercise and strengthening class. Wednesdays we have art class with Pati Orduña. Pati also has a decent history of art therapy in some sense. She worked with another organization. I'm not entirely sure if I'm able to share the name of the organization, but she worked with an organization that helps mental health in some capacity, right? So I'll leave it at that. And so she had a decent history of working with art and healing and the healing process through art. And so she started an activity with us called Art Heals.
Mm.
Honestly, it's such a rewarding thing to see these stroke survivors create art all the while they're kind of just chatting and it- we're a very tight knit group at the moment, and everybody just loves to work with one another, and that's what we really see during these times. That's when they love to hang out the most, and they're creating art, and that's very fun. Thursdays, what usually was Thursdays, currently we're having it Wednesday mornings, is tennis with Laredo Tennis Association. Laredo Tennis Association is another nonprofit here in town, awesome organization run by Dr. Trevino and Tina Trevino. And they do a lot of other things like tennis for the blind.
Yeah.
They do tennis classes with I believe it's the Children Autistic Group. I'm
Hmm.
not entirely sure what their name is, and they decided to reach out to us because they kind of saw what we were doing. And yeah, we've been going at it. I really want to say like 4 years now, and
Wow.
man, I'll tell you, it's amazing to see how much tennis can go for their balance. So I was just telling this story to Bill and Didi just last hour that Jesse, which is one of our stroke survivors, was in tennis class this Wednesday morning, and we kept doing this exercise, and he kept stumbling and he kept tripping and he kept kind of 2 inches away from the floor, and he couldn't get it. And luckily for us, we had TAMU nursing students with us, so they kind of caught him each time. And we continued, and at the end of the day he was able to do the entire exercise without falling, without stumbling, without doing anything. And this is all tennis. When you
Wow.
kind of think of tennis, you just think of racket hitting the ball and we're going back and forth.
Yeah.
There's so much more to it, and Laredo Tennis Association really puts their thought into this. And then Saturdays we have biking with Bill Hernser, which is
Mhm.
our founder. He was an adamant biker before his stroke
Oh
and
yeah.
biker now. So he started a bike club out at North Central Park. They meet every other Saturday, and we have very interesting bikes. So we have your regular old bike, the ones that you usually see people riding, and then we have bikes with training wheels,
Hmm.
or tricycles and recumbent bikes. So it's all kind of adaptive to what the stroke survivor can do and what they're ready to do.
I saw your flyer, and you talk about having meetings every second Monday of the month at the San Martin the Porres Family Life Center at 7 p.m. Is that still ongoing?
Unfortunately, not due to
Okay.
COVID, right? So,
Right.
so those were interesting times because that's when we had most of the members showing up, or mostly all of the members showing up, and we had physicians from around town, therapists, community members coming to talk about different resources that were around town. That was just a great time for all of us to get together. I really wish times were better
I
so
know.
we could do that.
Hopefully
But
get back
yeah,
to that soon, right?
currently at a pause, hoping to get back to it. Right? Yeah.
Excellent. Now I know that you are active on Facebook as well. If anybody wants to find you, they can just look for Laredo Stroke Support Group on the web, laredostrokesuppport.com, which has a very, very robust website because, I mean, you talk about speech therapy, you talk about life after stroke, who the Laredo Stroke Support Group is, and how to donate. So, what can somebody donate to help your efforts as a group?
Yeah. So if you don't mind me kind of backtracking just a little
Yeah,
bit, you
absolutely.
mentioned speech therapy, and
Mhm.
that's one of the other therapies that we provide, and that's literal to its name. So that's not adaptive. That's actual speech therapy, and it's very crucial in the recovery of a stroke survivor. As we know, Bill, traveled to Austin for 5 years just to receive
Mhm.
that speech therapy. So we partnered up with the same organization Bill used to work with out in Austin by the name of Austin Speech Labs, and we provide speech therapy, teletherapy, right, through Zoom and through Skype, which kind of ties into how they could donate. So uh, speech therapy is expensive.
Absolutely.
It's rather expensive, and we're taking the cost of every single cent of each of the therapy that we offer. We don't ask for any proof of insurance. We don't ask if they have insurance. We don't go through their insurance. Us and insurance just don't have any ties. We also don't ask for their money in any way or sense. And so that's when our efforts to uh, um, and I can't think of the word right now. I'm sorry, but our efforts to receive more donations and
Mhm.
have events where they could bring in some revenue towards the organization to provide speech therapy, to continue to pay our instructors for them to provide the classes that we offer. So yeah,
It is Austin Speech Labs is a 501(c)(3) as well.
that is
It,
correct.
it provides intensive speech therapy at an affordable cost. I'm going to be posting the contact information right now and keep that on the screen for a couple seconds so people can get in touch with them. On your website at laredostrokesuppport.com, you also have an application, right, for a client in case they want to look into getting this speech therapy, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. For the regular organization as Laredo Stroke Support, there's no need to fill out any sort of application.
Right.
If you're looking to receive the speech therapy, there's an application through Austin Speech Labs. They ask you a series of questions to better understand your difficulties with speech. And shortly after your application, uh, they receive the application, send it over to me, and say, can we set up an eval? We set up that evaluation with them first, evaluate them, decide how much therapy they need, and then from there on, we move forward with the therapy that is necessary for them. Austin Speech Labs works in an interesting way where they have what they call boot camps. So it's sessions of 8 weeks throughout the year. They meet for 8 weeks, pause for about 2 weeks, maybe a week or so, and then they start off another 8 weeks, and they reevaluate after each 8 weeks to see if they're going to need to continue the therapies, or maybe they could kind of go down in hours. Maybe they don't have to be seen as much, or maybe they're able to graduate, from the program all and for all because of how much they've improved.
Okay. It's an independent, on individual basis, right? Depending on how somebody
Exactly.
improves, at what pace each person improves.
Yeah.
One of the tabs that you have listed on your website as well is life after stroke. I imagine this is just as important to family members, as well as the person who is suffered the stroke.
Yeah, exactly. So one of the other resources that we offer is a caregivers group. So
Mhm.
just as the stroke support group, we have our caregivers group, and that's a time for a lot of the caregivers to kind of come together and really chat about different things, like how they've been doing. Just them kind of just saying, "Hey, I'm not doing well today," and that's okay. And they, really really good support group and really a support team that they are for one another. And that's why we decided to start that tab, because a lot of the times we'd have the families coming to us for the resources that we have. So they're looking for speech therapy, they're looking for any of the other activities that we offer. But then, we give that all to them, and then they kind of take a pause and say, okay, please tell me how I'm going to get through this. Like,
Right. They
now
need
I don't.
support too.
Exactly. And you're kind of standing here and saying, "Well, I could only tell you what's going to happen to your husband from here, and after his stroke. I could only tell you that, he's going to need speech therapy, or he's going to need some sort of physical therapy. I really don't know how to tell you how you're going to be able to cope with this." And that's
Right.
exactly why we decided to start that tab, to kind of give them that, at least some sort of pathway to find out what is the best way to cope, what is the best way to take care of your loved one that recently had a stroke, and also just offer ourselves to them and say, you're not alone. There's
Right.
so many other caregivers out there that are going through the same thing.
I have many friends who are caregivers, whether it's Alzheimer's or stroke and things like that. And the burden that is obviously carried by many caregivers sometimes is shouldered in silence. So knowing that
Yeah.
there's support out there is huge. As a nonprofit, I imagine not only do you need support from, financial support from the community, but what about volunteers? How does that play out with the Laredo Stroke Support?
Yeah, we're always in need of volunteers. We've been very, very lucky. Most recently, started working with Laredo College and TAMU. So, with Laredo College, we're working with their occupational therapy program,
Okay,
and we've had their students coming to volunteer in each of our programs, in each of our activities, and they're a very much help, and very much needed help too, right?
sure.
So, for the most part, it's only me and Muncie and Roger, which is our employees. Um, there's only three of us. Sometimes to the activities, there's only one of us that's able to go, and so we're in need of people going out there and kind of helping us throughout the process, being with the stroke survivors. If they're having a hard time getting through something, you're kind of just there as support and to facilitate. And we also partnered up with TAMU, and they've also been volunteering in most of our activities as well. So
Okay.
yeah, and always, we'd always very much appreciate volunteers.
Anything you'd like to add to maybe somebody who is a caregiver who may not be participating or taking advantage of what the Laredo Stroke Support Group can offer?
Yeah, I think, the first couple of weeks are going to be hard. There's no doubt about that. But I think it's also very important that you reach out, or try to find somebody that has gone through the same thing, because they could really be of much help, especially those first couple of weeks when you have to, for example, the first time your significant other or your mother or your father comes back home from the hospital, and you really have to um, uh, adapt everything for them. Perhaps you have to put up a ramp. Perhaps you have to, I don't know, do different things for them. Get a new bed. If they're living upstairs, you're gonna have to bring everything downstairs. It's very important for you to figure out all of these other things that you're not maybe taking into consideration. And so it's very nice to have somebody there, that's really gonna cheer you on throughout all of this. It's gonna be hard, but they know what it's like, and it's some sort of comfort that you'll feel knowing that there's a group of other people that have gone through the same thing and could really share their experience with you.
Absolutely. I'm going to be posting your Facebook information, website, contact information, and phone number at the end of the video so anybody can reach out to you. And I personally want to say thank you for what you're doing for our members of our community. As a group, I've known Bill for decades. And I knew Bill before the stroke, and I've known him since. And just the strength and determination of a person going through that is it's inspiring, and it's difficult to see, right, as many caregivers know, right, but it's a fact of life to many many lives. So I thank you for what you do, and thank you for taking time today for sharing the message and the information about the Laredo Stroke Support Group and what you do.
Yeah, of course. Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely.